Whew, it's chilly. It's like 45 out. That's freezing for us Texans. Welcome back to the Real Remodel Project. This is my 1970s house that we're showing how to do a whole house remodel. And if you've been watching this series, things have grown quite a bit. I've got an analogy for you. Have you ever been to the doctor and you go and the first thing they say is take all your clothes off and put this robe on? Why are they doing that? They want to take a look at your body to make sure that you don't have a mole on your back that's cancerous or some other issue. And that's basically what we have here. We have de-skinned the whole house. Now, the last time I published on this, I was doing the work with my boys and a couple of buddies. And I got to the point where I realized, gosh, this is just too much for me to do. And I actually want to rip everything off, including the exterior facade. So I brought in my friends at Trade Ready. They're an Austin, Texas contractor. They did an amazing job. So for instance here, this was an all brick front, and now that that brick's off, we can actually see how the house was built. And again, this is akin to your doctor taking a look at your skin. This is ridiculous. Look at this porthole window on the front and how this was installed. There's basically no flashing or air sealing details on this. And the crazy part about this product in particular, this is basically a cardboard product. I'll rip off a little chunk so you can see it. Here's the product right there. I mean, it's basically a glorified cardboard with some kind of an aluminumized facer on there. So this is a 1970s house, but what's scary to me is that literally within about a 25-mile drive of here, there's brand new homes being built by production builders with really the same system. Now, they've done a little better job of sealing the thermoply and installing the windows in a more waterproof way, but when you don't pay attention to air sealing, and in fact, I get this all the time, Matt, you're building houses too tight. Houses need to breathe. Well, no, this is how houses are being built by some builders in the nation. This is not a good method. And we're gonna show you why we don't want our houses to breathe, because that leads to all kinds of problems. But let's look at the condition of the thermoply. Now again, this is a late 70s house. So we're approaching 50 years old. Not a young house, but 5 decades is not that long. Look at all this damage right here. I mean, basically the paper facing has disintegrated. We even have some mold growth right here. Now, why did it happen in this particular case? If you look up, we've got a gutter here that's missing a kick-out flashing on the roof. We've got a second-story roof dumping water down to here, no kick-out flashing. A lot of water is being dumped into this location, basically straight down to the wall. Now, there was a brick facade, so the brick was sort of buffering that, but brick is porous. It's absorbing that water, and you can see what happened behind there. Tons of basically rot, and we'll go back on the other side of there and see if we've got some sheathing rot as well. Now, if you remember my earlier episodes, the brick was all stained in this area, and we actually have some growth, some mold growth on the backside. But what's interesting is where all that brick was stained, and again, we've got no kick-out flashing, although probably less water coming down here than the other side. But check it out, the thermoply here is actually in better shape, which is interesting because that brick is absorbing that water, and then the sun comes out, it heats the brick, and that water wants to be forced to the inside. And then remember from before, what happened on the inside here is the moisture that came through didn't have a way to dry to the inside. There was an effect, there basically was a vapor barrier on the inside because there was a cabinet here. And the sheetrock over here was fine. The sheetrock to the left of it's fine. There was nothing that was stopping the drying to the inside. But because this cabinet was on this garage wall, that's where we have all this nasty mold growth. And that, as terrible as that looks, that's actually kind of light compared to some of the other mold growth that we saw in the house as we did demo. Now this is another big no-no. We've got a garage furnace unit right here with a not weather stripped door. So basically we've got air leakage from the garage in here. And what do you keep in your garage? You keep gasoline and other nasty stuff. And then this is a unit that there's a return on the back side of this wall, and the air is flowing up and out. And if you look in here too, we've got a bunch of mold growth on the duct board and some of these areas, if you can see that. It's pretty disgusting in there. But let's go see what the back side of that looks like. The sheetrock in the whole house is taken out, but I left the garage. I have a personal golf cart that we use to shuttle up and down in my neighborhood and take to the pool. So that's why we haven't taken that sheetrock out, but the rest of the sheetrock's gone. Now this is kind of cool. When you first walk in, you've got a utility room. And it took me a second to realize as we were actually did the sheetrock removal with my kids, why are the studs painted white here? Well, what most likely happened was there was some kind of a leak or a backup, and some service company was called, and as part of the remediation, they were worried about some mold growth in the studs, so they painted it with this white paint, which actually seems like it's done a good job. I don't see any blackness on the back of the sheetrock here that they'd painted. I don't see anything on the studs. It looks, for the most part, pretty good. But look at the thermoply that's back there, which is this cardboard sheathing. It's in terrible shape. We had some holes in there. There's holes that were not sealed at all from this Freon line coming from the upstairs. Look at how rickety it is. Think that was doing any structural duties after a couple years. One good wind in this house could have knocked over. All right, now when we come into the kitchen, oh, I'm sorry, let me mention this too. I haven't popped out the water heater, but when you look up in the water heater closet, I didn't take any sheetrock out. That's the way it looked. There was no sheetrock in the ceiling there, which means that that water heater closet was basically connected to the outside. And if you saw my earlier videos, we had massive air leak numbers in this house. I bet my previous homeowner had a hard time keeping the house cold. Now check out this. This is the back of the sheetrock on the back side of the water heater. You see we got two copper pipes in here, and there's all this weird stippling on the drywall. And when I first saw that, I thought, oh, is that mold? But no, look at the pattern. It runs from here up the pipes, and you can kind of see it seemingly concentrated around these two pipes. And then we get to where the pipes entered the water heater closet, and there's nothing above that. So what happened? We had rats getting in here, and I'm not sure exactly where they were getting in, but they were sitting on top of that pipe and sitting on top of that pipe, and they were going to the bathroom. And what you're seeing there is stains from their feces, basically. And then at the bottom here, all that black stuff lined up right there, that is rat poop. Man, that's gross. Crazy. All right, now what else did we see from an indoor air quality perspective? Remember that that furnace room that I showed you that was in the garage? This sheetrock here is the back side of that. And look at the bottom side where the return is. I think I may have shown this in another video to you, but look how black and nasty all the mold growth was on the bottom of that sheetrock. Those upflow units that are in kind of outside unconditioned spaces are really prone to that. It's really not good. And you can see this is the return side, and they basically just cut a big hole in on this side to return the air back into the furnace. And then it blew up, and then here was a supply. These two were supply. And as you saw in my videos, all the sheetrock in here, there was a ton of rats that had gotten in here. And basically the sheetrock, when I took it down, was raining rat poop. Interesting to see they had trusses back then from the late 70s. These are kind of a early truss design where you've got some metal and we've got about a 10 or 12-inch depth. I'm actually probably going to keep those where they work, but we're going to extend the floor on the upstairs out a little bit. We're also going to have to work on this concrete step as the plans change. And then in this room, I guess I haven't talked a whole lot about the plan change, but Kit Johnson, my architect's done a great job of really opening up the space. This stairwell is going to go away. The kitchen, the dining room, which was going to be this space now, and this family room are going to be totally opened up and exposed to each other. That's going to be fantastic. I love what Kit did with that. Now this presents a problem for me though. Look, I've got this vaulted ceiling in this space, and it's interesting to see how they framed that in the 70s. And actually my current house in this neighborhood has the same. You've got these traditional rafters. These looks like 2x6s spanning up to a ridge right here above me. And then, actually they're not rafters, I'm sorry, those are connected to the trusses. And then you've got more traditional 2x4 trusses running throughout here. And you were up in that attic with me at some point if you watched the previous episodes. Man, that attic was so hot and was so filled with rats and other things getting in there. So what's going to happen is by opening this space up and by pushing this out, you'll notice that the original house actually stopped right here. See this line in the concrete right here? This is a crack because this is the slab that I'm standing on that's original, and this slab over here was poured later. And then you also notice this header was added, And then this framing over here is traditional framing. This isn't trusses, so this is newer lumber. I'm not sure when this was done, maybe in the 80s or early 90s. There's a pitch change on the roof. And so by extending out this family room back this direction, I'm gonna have to basically end up ripping up a bunch of these trusses and turning this into hand-cut framing, which gives me an opportunity though. It means that I can change the way the insulation runs on this house, and that's a big deal. You know, traditionally insulated houses where you have drywall as your air barrier and then everything goes on top, they work pretty well. And you may have seen my buddy Jake Bruton do that. But the problem is in Texas where we're slab on grade, I don't have any space in my basement for my mechanicals. My mechanicals have to be worked into that design. So in this case, I'm gonna actually reframe this attic with more traditional framing so that I can open it up. And I'm also, here's the big deal, gonna change the way the insulation works on this house. We're gonna take the insulation out to the outside envelope. We're gonna use exterior insulation on the walls, and we're gonna use some zip system sheathing to really make sure that's nice and airtight and well sealed. And then we're gonna run that all the way up to the gable. See this gable right here where there was an original gable vent right here? We're gonna close off that gable vent. We're gonna run that zip system sheathing all the way up to the gable, add exterior insulation on the outside there, and then I'm also going to do that on the roof deck. So now my insulation line, instead of being on the flat here where my ceiling sheetrock would be, that I'm blowing it in, it'll be up at the roof deck, which means that my attic now won't be a hot attic, it'll be conditioned. It'll be basically the same temperature as the rest of the house, maybe a couple degrees hotter. It's going to make a huge difference in the performance of this house. It means that I'll be able to get a little storage space up there. I'll have a nice mechanical room. It's going to be a huge change. Also interesting to note here, see look, we've got the silver facing here, and then you notice in some other places that silver goes away and it's black. That's what was being used for weather and air barrier. In the back of the house, this is tar paper. So this tar paper right here was added right to the studs by the framers. And then on top of the tar paper, they installed a type of siding, which is kind of a structural sheathing slash siding product that we often in Texas refer to as T111. And you can see it's gotten pretty damaged on the back here. I think I've shown this before. But this plywood is probably 5/8 plywood. It has this V-groove and it has kind of a rough face on it. When this got nailed through the tar paper into the studs, this is going to give shear, but it's also giving a siding all in one. So it was an inexpensive way to add siding and shear to a house like this. Now we took the chimney down. Why did I do that? A couple of reasons, but it really was weird to have the chimney offset when my family room got bigger and when I'm removing the stairs over here. The stairs are going to change location. I'm going to do kind of a cool modern stair with my friends at View Rail. But the fireplace was in kind of the wrong location. But back to that doctor analogy, check this out. You can really see where some damage was, totally hidden by that chimney coming up. And look at this over here. We've got a ton of rot happening because that brick was soaking up the water every time it rained. It was to the sky. And then that water was slowly getting released. And where there was wood nearby and touching that brick, that's where that damage happened. So there's a bunch of rot in this place, and that's going to be really nice to change that. The other thing about a fireplace, honestly, I'm in Texas. It doesn't get that cold. I joked about it being cold today at 45. It doesn't make a lot of sense to do traditional fireplaces, in my mind, on a house that's a high performance house. So what we're going to do is I'm going to talk to my landscape designer. We're going to design an outdoor fireplace. I'll use like a Firewalk unit or one of those that I could do an outdoor fireplace. We can make some beautiful outdoor fires. We'll have a chimney to get rid of the smoke so it's not like an open fire pit, but then we can see it from the inside and I can use it more. All right, last couple quick things on this before we wrap up today's video. One of the things that I need to work on, in fact, I've got a call this afternoon with Steve Basic, who's helping me on some of the details, who's helping Kit and I, is what do I do with these windows? Do I do any windows or I do Audi windows based on that exterior insulation, and how thick of exterior insulation do I want to do? And I've got a brick ledge here and I'm going to be going back with some brick, so I need to figure out how thick do I make my insulation. This is getting ripped off and we'll have zip system sheathing here. This is getting ripped off and this will have zip system sheathing. I'm reconfiguring my window openings, all that stuff's happening, so it's going to change quite a bit. So stay tuned for a future video. Oh, you know what? I actually want to walk upstairs before we cut this video. Come on upstairs with me. Yep. Okay, so first point of disgustingness when you walk up. I don't know if that is a dog urine or dog feces stain, but the previous homeowner had a big dog. I'm thinking what happened was there was maybe a gate at the top of the stairs, and maybe that's the spot where the dog had a hard time controlling himself. We're seeing a lot of stains upstairs in the plywood here. This is a 3/4 old school plywood. It's got a fair amount of squeaks. I have no idea why they did these cutouts in here, but it's fairly soft in these places. So I need to figure out what to do in the plywood. I think what I'm going to end up doing is rescrewing all this plywood and then skinning it again with some 3/4 Advantech on top that I'll glue and screw or nail together so that this will get stiffer and I'll get rid of some of this weirdness. But what do I do about dog stains? And I know I've got rat feces on top of these top cords of my 2x4. I think I'm actually going to come in here with a power washer, maybe power wash this interior out. It's no big deal for framing to get wet as long as it can dry, and we're all opened up, so even if it takes a week or two to dry out in here, it's no big deal. But I'm worried about leaving all that stuff in the wall cavities. Here's another problem that you couldn't see in the house until we deskinned it. Remember that water heater that's downstairs? This pipe here, this is your B vent. This takes the exhaust gases from a traditional non-power vented water heater and atmospherically vents it up through the roof. But look at this hole in the floor. This actually is not as big as the hole that was at the top of the 2x4. Look at that. The plumber in the 70s, when they plumbed this and added this, they've basically gotten rid of all this wood framing here. And with the insulation on the top, there was a huge hole in here, massive hole for air to leak through and for air to come into the house. Check out my insulation 2.0 video because we talked about some of those things and how you could change this house in terms of performance without going to this extent that I've gone to on this remodel. This is also the closet that had the upflow unit in the hallway. This is pretty traditional in a lot of houses, even in the north, where you have a doorway here. The furnace is here. Below the furnace is the return air. So air was coming in the return grill. You had a door on top. It's blowing up and into the attic space and then back down into the house. Very, very leaky way to do it. So we're going to change that, and I'll show you some new ways to do it. Here's also kind of an interesting find on the house. Check that out. We've got a baby stroller that looks like it's been in the attic a long time. And see how dark stained it is on the right-hand side there? I don't know if you can see that, but man, I'm thinking those dark stains is probably some rat activity as well on the right side, because look, if you look at the top of the sheetrock on the side here, if you can see that, I mean, there is just a ton of rat droppings up there. On my new design with Kit, I didn't want to do a flat roof, which was one of the initial proposals. I wanted to have a pitched roof, but I'm punching windows towards the front of the house to change the facade. And this roof pitch is too deep to really get a good window and get egress out of this space. And because these are trusses, and these trusses on the front here land onto a girder truss, see this triple ply truss? They typically call that a girder truss. So this truss is bearing front to back, and then those trusses, which are going over top of the garage header, are bearing here and on the front of the house. I'm going to basically have to rip this whole garage roof off and reframe it with traditional 2x10 rafters. And then I'm going to have to put a beam in there. So I'm going to talk to my engineer about how to do that. But what that's going to do is going to drop my roof pitch down. So now I can put some more traditional casements in the front here. And in fact, I just ordered my JELD-WEN window package, which should get here mid-December, January-ish. So we're not too far away from really starting on the project in earnest. Anyways, guys, lots to talk about over here. It's been a really fun project, and if you followed along, you know that I started with a totally unrealistic budget, and it's funny that I couldn't see it myself. Been building for 25 years, and I just didn't see all the problems. Part of it was because I bought it from a wonderful neighbor who'd lived here forever. I bought it sight unseen, basically. I paid retail price for it, but we're gonna do some serious changes to this house. And again, I'm gonna keep track of where I'm spending and how I'm spending. So to this point, really, I haven't had a whole lot of expenses except for the architect, trade ready to come in and do some of the demo. And what else have I had? Some dumpster costs. So we're probably about 20-ish thousand, maybe slightly more into the project. I'll have to pull a report, but we're doing pretty good at this point. I've de-skinned the house. I can really see what the problems are. And now we can, in effect, build a new house. The problem is there's an old house in the way. And that's the thing about remodeling that's tough, is that there's an old house in the way. A lot of this framing is going to work and the second story is going to work, but a good portion of the first floor, including the roof above the master and this garage roof, are going to have to be ripped off. But a good framing contractor can do that. A good builder can do that. So as I talk about pricing and what I'm doing on this house, in general, I try to talk to you, my YouTube audience, as if you're a pro builder, a pro remodeler. If you're not a pro builder or remodeler watching this, I'd love to have you and I'm glad you're here. But remember that generally speaking, as I'm talking, I'm assuming you have some level of expertise, and I'm not treating you like a DIY channel, right? I'm using professional subs. I'm using most of the time real pros. I did a little bit of demo with my family, but we're really going to use pros on this project. Guys, thanks for following along on my real remodel project. This has been super fun. As I've gotten to this point and we've gotten a bigger project, I got to say it's grown in scope, but it's been a lot of fun. Be sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any new content. We publish every Tuesday and every Friday. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Otherwise, we'll see you next time on The Build Show.